Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Maggie and this is Maggie May Crochet. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make these really cute washcloths. I absolutely love making washcloths. They work up really fast and they're a great way to practice your stitches. So if you're new to crochet, this is a really wonderful way to learn new stitches and actually have something to show for it. Taking on a blanket or an afghan might be kind of intimidating for someone who's new to crochet, but a washcloth is perfect. And it's a great way to use up any leftover yarn that you might have. A little trick to make sure that you have enough yarn before you embark on one of your projects is to take your project and weigh it. Okay, this says 35 grams, and then take your leftover yarn and see how much that weighs. 36 grams. Okay, so I have just enough to do a whole nother washcloth. That was lucky. So using a kitchen scale can really save you a lot of frustration in your project making if you know ahead of time that you'll have enough yarn or not. So this particular stitch is called an even moss stitch. There is another moss stitch that I will show you how to do in the next video. We'll create washcloths with that stitch as well. So you only need to know 3 stitches: a chain, a slip stitch, and a half double crochet. So you'll need a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook or an eye hook and 100% cotton yarn. I'm using the Walmart brand Mainstays cotton yarn. This is a very soft yarn. It almost feels like a baby yarn. I really love the way it worked up in these washcloths. I would use these more as a washcloth or a spa cloth or maybe even a baby washcloth more than a kitchen washcloth because they're so soft. Alrighty, so to begin, we need to create a chain. Your chain can be as long as you like, as long as it's in multiples of 2. These washcloths I made using a chain of 30. To begin, you need to create a slip knot and place that on your hook. Now, if you're new to crochet, I will briefly show you these stitches in this video. If you would like a more detailed tutorial, I'll make sure to link some tutorials down in the description box below. So we're going to chain 30. A chain is simply wrapping the yarn around your hook and pulling it through the loop that's on your hook. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You want to make sure that you're crocheting pretty loosely for this particular pattern. I'll show you why it's important as we move along. To count your chains, you're just going to be counting your little V's here, okay? Each V is 1. You're going to be placing your first stitch in the second chain from your hook. You never count the yarn that's on your hook. So this would be my first chain and this would be my second chain. Now, you have a choice. You can place your hook into the front of your chain, or I like to place my stitches in the back loops of my chain. If you turn your chain over, you'll notice these little bumps on the back. You can place your stitches there, and I find that doing that gives you a nicer finished edge. So the first stitch you'll make is a slip stitch. A slip stitch is simply placing your hook into your stitch, and remember we're going into the second one from our hook. 1, 2, placing our hook into that stitch, wrapping the yarn around your hook, drawing it through your stitch, and then drawing it through the loop on your hook. That's a slip stitch. Your second stitch is a half double crochet. You make a half double crochet by wrapping the yarn around your hook, placing it in your chain, yarning over and bringing your yarn through your chain. I have 3 loops on my hook. I'll yarn over and pull my yarn through all 3 loops on my hook, and that's a half double crochet. Now to make this even moss stitch, that's all there is to it. You make a slip stitch and then a half double crochet. We're going to continue this all the way down our chain. Our next stitch is a slip stitch, so I'll put my hook into my next chain, yarn over, pull through, and pull through the loop on my hook. Next stitch is a half double crochet, yarn over, placing my hook into the next chain, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. Now something I want to point out is if you are new to crochet or newer, you might want to try using an acrylic yarn first. Acrylic yarn is a little easier to work with. It kind of grabs onto your hook a little easier for you, and it doesn't split. You'll notice that I'm using my fingernail a lot to help ease the yarn onto my hook. That's because it wants to split, and cotton yarns do that. Okay, so well, here we go. I was talking. I want to show you something. So if you get distracted and you're like, uh-oh, what was my last stitch? Here's a little trick for you with this particular stitch. You see you have 3 loops here on your last stitch. That's your half double crochet. A slip stitch is going to, I'll show you what that looks like on your hook. I have 1 loop. So that tells me my last stitch was a slip stitch. My next stitch will be a half double crochet, yarning over, putting my hook into that stitch, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops are on my hook, yarn over, pulling through all 3 loops. Next is a slip stitch, putting my hook through that chain, yarn over, pull through, and pulling through the loop that was on my hook. All right, so my last stitch was a slip stitch, so this will be a half double crochet. I'm yarning over, putting my hook into my chain, pulling it through, 3 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through. Slip stitch is next. Put my hook into my chain, yarn over, pull through my loop on my hook. Now, if you are someone who's comfortable with crochet, and you want to move along, you can join us after you've completed your first row. I'll make sure to put timestamps in the video so that you can move forward or review as you need to. All right, that was my half double crochet. Now is a slip stitch. So continue this pattern repeat of a slip stitch and a half double crochet all the way to the end. When we get to that last stitch, I'll get back with you and show you how we move on to our next row. I will be ending with a slip stitch. With the even moss stitch, you always begin and end with a slip stitch. That should be your first and last stitch of every row. Okay, so that was my slip stitch, and then you chain 1. Turn your work, and we're going to be working across the other way. Now, one thing I want to point out is where we're going to be placing our hook for each of these next stitches. When you're looking at your work while it's laying flat, you'll see V's across the top. You don't want to place your hook into the V's from the flat side. Turn your work over. These are the V's we're going to be working in. The V's you see from the top side, not the flat side. Okay, so make sure that you're looking at this side, the top of your work. Okay, so our first stitch is going to be a slip stitch, and we're going to be placing it into our first stitch in the row. Try to keep this stitch a little loose because you're going to find that your slip stitches can get tight on you, and then it's going to be really difficult to put your hook into your work. So our first stitch was a slip stitch. Next is a half double crochet. Turn your work over so you see your V. Next will be a slip stitch. Half double crochet. We're putting our hook here into the top V because this bar that runs across is what's going to give us this nice ridge all across our work, okay? So make sure that when you're putting your hook in, you're placing it here and not down here, okay? Slip stitch. Try to make it loose, and then half double crochet. Slip stitch. You'll find your slip stitches are a little snug, so remember to try to keep them loose. Half double crochet. Slip stitch. And a half double crochet. Slip stitch. And a half double crochet. Now you heard me call this an even moss stitch. You might hear people refer to it as a moss stitch. There are actually two moss stitches. This one is considered an even moss stitch, and then the other one is traditionally the moss stitch. I will make another video, another washcloth video, showing the moss stitch, the traditional moss stitch. Okay, coming up to the end here again. Now, whoops, make sure I've got both bars on my V there. This last slip stitch might be a little challenging to find, but it's there. This was our turning chain. If you turn your work over, you'll see that V right here, okay? So that's where our slip stitch is going to go. And it tends to get a little tight, so don't be afraid to use your fingernail to help guide the yarn on your hook. I got mine a little too snug there. And you may as well, so I'll show you the struggle that it's real. Okay, there it is. See, I've got my two bars of that V. I made that stitch a little tight, so I really do want to remind you to try to pull up on your hook to make sure that your last slip stitch is nice and loose. And then chain one, keep it loose. I'm a very tight crocheter, and that's something I'm really trying to work on. This is a good practice for me because this does require you to keep your stitches loose to get into those slip stitches. So I'm working on it. All right, so I'm pulling up to give myself some extra room there. Going into this space, this was our turning chain. We're going into the next stitch, which was our slip stitch. Keeping it loose. You can tug up a little bit on it if you need to make it loose, and then pull your work through. Yarn over, go into your next stitch with your half double crochet, slip stitch, and continue. I'll meet you at the end of the row. Okay, coming up to the end again. Half double crochet and a slip stitch. Again, to find where to put your hook, turn your work over and you'll see your V. You're going to place your hook underneath the two bars of that V. Slip stitch, chain, and turn your work. All right, so I think you got it. You can continue making more rows until you have your washcloth to the size that you like. These washcloths measured to be about 8 inches by 8 inches. You can, if you don't want to use a tape measure, check your work by bringing your corner to corner, and if you have a triangle that is even, you have a square. That's, geometry. So I'll let you continue on and catch up with you at the end and show you how to end off your work. So I wanted to check in and share a tip with you real quick. If you're having a hard time finding that last stitch in your row, the slip stitch, using a stitch marker can help you identify that stitch much easier. Let me show you how you do that. So when you begin your next row, we always start and end with a slip stitch for this pattern. You're going to right away place a stitch marker into that first stitch. Okay, that's going to help you when you come back around to try to find that last stitch again. So for instance, if I had done that with my last row, my stitch marker would already be here so that when I crocheted across, I'd be able to find that last stitch, that V, to place my slip stitch in. So these stitch markers are a big help, especially if you're new to crochet, in helping you keep count of your rows and your stitches. If you don't have these stitch markers, you could use anything really that will stay in your stitch. Something like a paper clip will work, or even a bobby pin can help you keep your place. Alrighty, so I just finished my last row. I'm to the point that I will make my chain. To make sure though that I'm done, I'm going to do my little geometry test and just bring corner to corner. And I do have a nice triangle that is equal. So I'm gonna call this washcloth complete. So now that I'm ready to finish, my last stitch will just be this chain at the end, and I'm going to pull my work through a bit, leaving myself a tail because we're going to be sewing this in to finish off. Okay, so you'll just pull your tail through that last stitch and draw it tight. That's going to cinch it up for you. Now we just need to sew in our ends. So to do that, you'll need to use a, where did I put my needles? Oh, here. You'll need to use a tapestry needle or a darning needle, they can be called. And you're going to work your thread or your yarn into your washcloth. Now what I like to do is take my yarn and kind of go this way or this way and see which gives a better look to my corner. And I think going this way is going to give a better finished look. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to start feeding it through my yarn or my washcloth. Now it really doesn't have to be in any particular stitch or pattern in here. You're just feeding it randomly throughout your work, and you're going to find that it blends in very nicely, that you really won't be able to see where your tail is, but you do want to give yourself a pretty good tail because you don't want your work coming undone. So I just like to kind of randomly go through my work in all kinds of directions so that I know it's good and secure, that my work is not going to come undone in the wash or in the laundry. So just pick up a few threads. And sew around. I like to go in one direction and then come back. I'm choosing not to do a decorative border on this particular washcloth. I think that it's really cute with this rustic look, kind of the way it is. So, all right, so I brought my yarn around, down, and out this way, so I think that's going to be pretty darn secure. Now I'll just trim it, and then I'm going to come around and sew in my starting tail. If you can split some of your yarn with your needle, that's even better. That's going to secure your yarn even more. Alrighty guys, there you have it. This is the even moss stitch. I hope you found this video helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I'm looking forward to making some more washcloths with you. I think I'm going to try to challenge myself to do a washcloth Wednesday, where I'll come up with a new washcloth pattern or dishcloth pattern for us to work on together. If you are interested in following along, please make sure to click the notification bell so that you'll be notified the next time I post a video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.